You ready for a personality test that isn't the Rorschach? Excellent. So today we'll be using the diagnostic assessment blank, and all you need to do is tell me a couple things about yourself and I'll tell you something about your personality. So, you ready? All right. First, what's your birthday? Just month and date is fine. Okay. Favorite color? Okay, and what's your preferred hobby? Alright, so those three things means you'll be right about there. Ding! You ready for your personal result? You have a great need for other people to like and admire you. You have a tendency to be critical of yourself. You have a great deal of unused capacity, which you have not turned to your advantage. While you have some personality weaknesses, you're generally able to compensate for them. Your sexual adjustment has presented problems for you. Disciplined and self-controlled outside, you tend to be worrisome and insecure inside. At times, you have serious doubts as to whether you've made the right decision or done the right thing. You prefer a certain amount of change and variety and become dissatisfied when hemmed in by restrictions and limitations. You pride yourself as an independent thinker and do not accept other statements without satisfactory proof. You have found it unwise to be too frank in revealing yourself to others. At times, you are extroverted, affable, sociable, while at other times you're introverted, wary, reserved. Some of your aspirations tend to be pretty unrealistic. Security is one of your major goals in life. Now, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being it didn't describe you at all, and 5 being it described you perfectly, how well did this passage describe your personality? Hang on to that number, we'll get back to it in a few minutes, but for now, let's start the video. This video made possible thanks to the continuing support of viewers and patrons like you. Thanks! Hi! Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Cass, and I have a PhD in cognitive psychology. If you know your fields of psychology, you'll probably be aware that cognitive psychology doesn't tend to play around much with the personality dimensions. As such, you won't be getting an in-depth personality video series from me. In this video, we're sort of continuing where we left off in the last personality video. Kind of. In scripting this, I was basically looking at adapting an intro psych lecture on personality theories and didn't want to do that to you guys, so we're doing this instead. Hopefully it is sufficiently edutainful, but if you would be interested in a more in-depth look at the personality psychology stuff from a non-personality psychologist, let me know in the comments. This video's topic is a patron pick. If you would like to vote on future topics that we talk about on the channel, join in on the monthly live streams, have access to the fun little thing I'm doing for the channel's birthday next month, you can find me at patreon.com/CassErisYT, or just search for Cass Eris and I'll show up in the little search thing. Since we're talking business, you can also follow me on Twitter or on my personal Discord server. Links for those are in the description, and you know, like, comment, subscribe, that stuff, and yeah, on with the video. Personality is defined as a person's characteristic pattern of thinking, feeling, and acting. And this is something that we sort of intuitively understand about ourselves and others, like we can recognize different traits or features of personality. And this is how a lot of things are in psychology. Like, we intuitively understand how we perceive the world, right? Well, it turns out that there is a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't necessarily have access to. And so psychology as a science is trying to figure out how we work. And I used and will use perception as an example in this because it's one of the cleaner examples in psychology. It's more objective, less subjective, and easier to point to definitive models of this is agreed upon, this is how perception works. Personality psychology is not so clean or clear-cut. There are many different approaches to understanding personality, some more solidly empirical than others. And there can be a fair bit of academic fighting about which approach is the correct one. So, given the lack of agreement between people who study this, it's not surprising that a general understanding of the things that can determine or influence somebody's personality haven't made its way out into the mainstream. Going back to perception for a second, I hope that most people understand that vision works by light bouncing off of objects, that light entering your eyes, stuff happening, and then vision in the brain. Granted, there is a lot more stuff happening there between your eyes and your brain, but for a broad understanding of how vision works, I'm happy. Especially given how some old theories of vision worked, like the extra emission theory of vision. This put forward that you had some sort of beam coming out of your eye that interacted with the world before reporting back to what was seen. People like Plato believed this is how we saw. But I digress. The point I'm getting at here is I think that the general layperson understanding of something like perception and vision is beyond the general understanding of personality, because the field of personality psychology doesn't really have a coherent story to share. There's the trait approaches, depth perspectives, humanistic approaches, behaviorism view, and so on. Each of those categories has several competing models trying to explain why we are the way we are. This is absolutely a necessary part of the scientific process, but until there's one model or theory or whatever for explaining people's personality, there's going to be wiggle room for other approaches to slide on in, and those other approaches can kind of be suspect. Although it does occur to me that biology does have a coherent picture of how disease and illness work, but in the middle of a pandemic, people can say, fuck that, I want to go on spring break, or I'm going to drink bleach and that's going to fix everything. So maybe my optimism is misplaced. Anyways, how well did that passage at the beginning of the video describe you? Pretty good? Not so good? So this next part isn't going to be as surprising as it would be in like a classroom setting, but all of you got the same passage. I'll give you a moment to get over your shock. So the interesting part is that that language that was used to write that passage was based on the sorts of things that you would find in a horoscope. So no, the dab is not real. This passage is from the 1949 paper by Bertram Forer, where he demonstrated how susceptible we can be to these sorts of vague descriptions of ourselves. Forer did this through a classroom demo. I tried to duplicate it in my intro psych classes, but with some tech on my side to enhance the experience. I told my students that a friend of mine from grad school was working on a streamlined personality test and she needed pilot data. And so if they would be so kind to volunteer a couple minutes of their time, they could help out my friend. And this happened a couple weeks before we started the personality chapter, because pulling off any sort of demonstration in intro psych, or the higher level, especially psych classes, is damn near impossible. The students are on guard. They are fully expecting to be tricked going into anything. So getting any sort of demonstration to work is next to impossible unless we're talking basic, like perceptual stuff. I set up a little Google form sheet thing, I'll show you the screenshots in a second, and put the link on the course website. Participation was completely voluntary, not even getting extra credit for it, so of course, only about a quarter of the 2 sections did it. So it goes. It gathered their birthday, a self-assigned dummy code, which was only used to make this seem more real, and their favorite color. This info had no real impact other than being the info supposedly needed for my friend's personality test. Based on the color chosen, they were taken to a custom personality reading, which is the same one that you heard at the start of the video. They were then asked for their zodiac sign, if they knew it, an assessment of how well this personality test had measured them, and quick ratings of their verbal and math skills. I was only really interested in their rating of that generic passage, so these other questions were there to kind of throw them off the trail. They were asked to keep their test results private, given that this test was still in development, but who knows how well that worked. Results. This bar chart summarizes the ratings assigned by students. The horizontal axis is the rating assigned, going from rating the description as perfectly describing them to not describing them at all. And the vertical axis is the number of students who assigned each rating. The average rating was 3.7 out of 5, which is above a meh, but not terribly by much. We can compare this against Forer's results with the axes in the same places. My class's ratings are in the background, with 4 students' ratings in the foreground in orange. The mean rating for 4's class was 4.26, so much more towards the perfect rating than mine. There are any number of possible explanations for why I got a slightly weaker effect than 4 did originally. For one, is that suspicion I mentioned. At this point, intro psych students are learning about Milgram, Zimbardo, memory research, where we sort of kind of lie to the participants when they're going through the experiment about the exact nature of what they're doing, and students are pretty sensitive to that. And at 4's time, this research hadn't been done, so the students wouldn't possibly have been keyed into how manipulative the experimenters can be. Another difference is I gave this personality test in relative isolation. When 4 did it, there was the fake personality test and an actual sort of personality test of 4's own design. And so having this actual personality test may have boosted the credibility of this fake personality test. Speaking of those two tests, this plot is only showing 4's data. The ratings for the vague shared passage is in the back in orange, and the personalized evaluation ratings are in the foreground in green. There are comparable ratings for these two tests. So, his students thought that the vague passage that was based on the sorts of things you'd see in a horoscope was about as revealing about their personality traits as something actually tailored for them. And that, dear viewers, is the 4 effect. It's also sometimes called the Barnum effect for P.T. Barnum of circus fame. So part of his philosophy and how he organized his stuff was you have something for everybody. Maybe people will come for the animals, but if they don't like the animals, maybe they'll like the clowns. Because clowns weren't scary back then. Maybe. If you don't like the clowns, maybe you'll like the acrobats. You have something for everybody. This relates back to the vaguely written personality assessments in that you'll anchor onto the parts that speak to you, but ignore or discount the parts that don't. When it comes time to evaluate how relevant or meaningful or even credible this is, we tend to assign more weight to the things that we felt fit over those that don't. Which finally brings us to astrology. If you somehow aren't familiar, astrology puts forward that the time that you're born determines your personality traits. The broadest level we'll talk about here are the zodiac signs, and the year is basically divided into 12 chunks, and there is a corresponding constellation or sign for each chunk. It gets more complicated and potentially expensive if you get into where the moon, sun, or other celestial bodies were when you popped out. Hopefully, I don't have to go into the gory details of why astrology is a pseudoscience, but suffice it to say that the celestial bodies don't have an impact on who you are. If we go back to the concepts of reliability and validity from the previous personality video, astrology is lacking on all fronts. Yes, your birthday is fixed, so you'll always come out as whatever sign. But getting solid, not vague predictions about a person's personality from their zodiac sign is hard. And when these predictions are actually made, they aren't more accurate than chance. Let's go through an example. I'll even be your guinea pig. So we're going to go through the personality traits for 3 signs from one website and see how well they explain me. And I'm even going to be a little bit charitable on this, but I'll explain that later. So what we have here are the different traits for 3 of the zodiac signs from one website, so hopefully the descriptions are sort of consistent within themselves. And one of these is my actual zodiac sign, and the other 2 aren't. So let's see how they do. And we'll just go through and I'll do it sort of dummy coded where 1 is a hit, 0 is a miss. And yeah. So for sign number 1 of the strengths, progressive, I like to think I'm progressive. Original, sure. This is one of the things with astrology where it's vague enough, like most people would like to think that they're probably original. Being unoriginal is kind of boring, and who wants to be that? So let's all be original. And then let's look at the weaknesses for this sign. So this is another tricky thing with astrology and zodiac and all of that. When you're trying to evaluate the validity of what they're looking at, you need to honestly look at your negative traits and see if it actually applies to you or not. And I think I'm compromising about things like I like having fun with friends. Who doesn't like having fun with friends? Come on. But these are general traits that I think most people would identify with. Dislikes. Sign number 2. Desire to escape reality. Well, normally I'd say I'm pretty good with things, but the world's going super crazy town. But we'll go with the nah. Can be a victim martyr. Did Peterson write these? Because nope. Sleep. Who doesn't like sleeping? Honestly. Musical. Likes musical. Did I mistype something? Yes, I did mistype something. Sign number 3. Yes, vacation. Something that only this sign enjoys. Expensive things. Yes, I like shiny things. I like stuff. Fun with friends. That was a trait from sign 1. Weird. So now we've got this summary table of the different hit rates expressed as percentages instead of just the ones and zeros for the different traits for the different signs. Yeah, so you can see just overall, not really much of a difference, although it would seem like I'm leaning more towards sign 1 in terms of trait expression than the other ones. But if we go over here, did an ANOVA comparing the 3 signs, the hit rates between them, and the important thing here is the F and P value. And yeah, this is a really small sample size, but welcome to psychology. So what you would like to see for a significant difference between groups is a small p-value. In psychology, we consider typically things less than 0.05 as a significant difference and a larger F value. So F's typically over 1 will get you significant, depending on the sample size. I'm rambling. Anyways, the important thing here is that the p-value is very, 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 very much larger than 0.05. So this apparent sort of trend in which sign I tend to agree with more is not a significant difference. You know, it's just noise. And the kicker comes in with the different signs. So this is Aquarius, actually. This one is Pisces, and this one is Leo. Comment in the chat now, or in the comments, which sign you think is actually my zodiac sign. I'm kind of curious what you guys think there. So, my sign is actually Pisces. So I am actually sign number 2. I am a Pisces. My birthday is in that window period of time, and you know, not really significantly different from the other 2. So not really a strong case for Pisces explaining my personality. And that charity I was talking about earlier is I was born late, like almost a month late. And so some people argue that, you know, it's not the date that you popped out that matters, it's the date you should have been born. And so I should have been an Aquarius, but even that was pretty meh on describing me. I picked Leo as the 3rd sign because lions are cool, but also because it's a different element than the other 2. I could see somebody who's big into astrology making the case that equivalent ratings between my birth sign and another sign being equivalent because they're from the same element, and therefore astrology is still okay, and not, it's just sort of kind of describing me roughly equivalently no matter what. Yeah, I was into astrology as a kid, and tarot, and other mystical things, but the knowledge does come in handy from time to time, like now, or pub quiz night, so it's not a complete loss. I partially felt inspired to do this video because of the amount of people I see throwing around their zodiac signs as justification for things, especially from people who I would hope would know better than to trust in astrology. And given that I'm trying to be a science communicator, this kind of bothers me. Perpetuating an incredibly outdated personality test is no bueno in my book. And some personality traits, like being loud, fidgety, distractible, are better explained through things like ADHD than a particular star sign. The complication for me comes in when I saw someone say that they know astrology is completely bullshit, but it's just some harmless fun.
I think it's absolutely bullshit, and also really fun.
And on that level, okay. If it's treated sort of like a BuzzFeed quiz or something where the results don't really have much real-world impact, go to town, have fun, whatever, it's your life. But it's that other level that I'm making this video for. Too many people give too much time and money to astrologers, in my opinion. And maybe if it was people with too much money just having some fun, I could ignore that even. But people can become reliant when making major life decisions based on what they're told from the astrologer, and that's not okay. Where should I live? Should I take this job? Is this person right for me? And readings can cost several $100s. It's almost like an industry whose cash cows are people afraid to take responsibility and ownership for their life and associated choices. So to me, astrology can do harm, and I wish we would kind of just stop with it. Have fun with other quizzes. And I think that's where we're going to leave this. Personality psychology is a subfield of psychology that's working on the best way to predict and describe people's personalities. And there's a bunch of competing models. Some have held up to scrutiny better than others, but there's still no 100% agreed upon model of personality. The Forer effect is a cautionary message about how we can want to believe a personality test is giving us insight into ourselves, when it can just be providing vague statements that can be made true by most everyone. This is why we need to concern ourselves with the reliability and validity of personality tests, be it scientific or pseudoscientific. This vague insight can be provided by astrological readings, in addition to some other forms of pseudoscience. And yeah. Stay tuned. See you guys next week. Bye.